The following story takes place between the years 410 and 793 AD. Today we'll be tackling the history of medieval England. If this is the first time you visited the channel, I would recommend you watch the previous episode we made on England's ancient history before you dive into this one. If you've already watched that video, well done you. Hold on tight because we're going to jump straight into a historical whirlwind. Around the year 410, the Romans abandoned Britannia due to the Germanic invasions, as well as other internal problems afflicting the Western Roman Empire. That was when the British Isles entered a dark age, that is, a period for which there are very few primary sources. After the Roman retreat, the territory crumbled into multiple petty kingdoms, headed by a group of warring Britano-Romans, many of them Christian. For example, the area around London was the Kingdom of Londine, but the most important was the Kingdom of Dumnonia in the southwest, which comprised modern-day Cornwall, Devon and Somerset. In Wales there was the Kingdom of Powys and the Kingdom of Gwynedd, which would later give rise to the Kingdom of, you guessed it, Wales. However, these kingdoms were rather weak, so they all disappeared when new invading hordes arrived, comprised by Angles, Saxons and Jutes from northern Germany and the Jutland Peninsula in Denmark. The first of the invaders to strike were the Jutes, led by the brothers Hengist and Horsa. They arrived on the coast of what is today Kent, and it appeared that they were initially hired as mercenaries by a Britannic leader named Vortigern to fight against the Pict and Irish invaders. The Jutes did the job, but in exchange they demanded a very high price and also the right to settle in the region. The Britons refused, and that was when the fighting started. Fight! The year 455 saw the Battle of Aylesford, although nobody is really sure who won it. According to the myth, Vortigern then sought to make peace with Hengist, and in turn the Jute offered his daughter Rowena in marriage. But later, during a peace council, the Jutes pulled out their weapons and killed everybody they could get hold of. Traitors. Murderers. This is known as the Treason of the Long Knives, but it's not entirely clear if it really took place or not. According to the chronicles of Gildas the Wise, a guy I can only assume named himself, the Britons defended themselves under the orders of a leader named Ambrosius Aurelianus, whom the legend would later turn into the brother of Uther Pendragon and thus the uncle of King Arthur. Yes, that's right, that King Arthur.
I am Arthur, King of the Britons.
According to the tale, the Battle of Badon, or Mons Badonicus, took place around the year 500. This battle is famous because that was when the Britons managed to defeat the Anglo-Saxons and stop their advance throughout the island. The 9th century account, Historia Britanum, says that a guy named Arthur commanded the Briton troops and kicked the Anglo-Saxons' arses. Say hello to my little friend! The problem was that very soon afterwards, the plague of Justinian ravaged the land, and the Britano-Romans died in droves, while the Anglo-Saxons kept arriving in droves. Many of these Britano-Romans decided to flee the island and move to the region of Armorica in Gaul, settling in what is known today as French Brittany. Some travelled even further south, to Hispania, to the modern-day region of Galicia. Sorry Spanish viewers, I'm doing my best. Other groups of Britons simply shifted a little to the west, to Cumbria, Wales and Cornwall, moving in with other Britons who already lived there in order to hold out together. And lastly, there were some Britons who simply decided to stay in their land, accept the new Anglo-Saxon authority, and adapt to the culture of these new invaders.
You can either adapt and survive, or die with the past.
After the Jutes, it was the turn of the Saxons to occupy part of the island. They formed 3 kingdoms in the English south, which are easily recognisable today because they contain sex in their names, derived from Sax on, not because they were uncontrollably horny. Or maybe they were, who knows?
Sex. Where were we?
The first of these, the Kingdom of Sussex, or Southern Saxons, was founded in 490 by Aella. Later, around 519, King Cerdic created the Kingdom of Wessex, or Western Saxons, in what is today Hampshire, and it seems that he achieved this by killing a British king named Nathan Leod. Finally, we have the Kingdom of Essex, or Eastern Saxons, founded by King Aesquine. At this point, a third wave of invaders arrived, the Angles, who chose to settle down all over the central region. The first of their kingdoms was Lindsey, south of the Humber estuary. Soon afterwards, other Angles penetrated into the Midlands following the River Trent, where they initially formed the Kingdom of Iclingas, which would later become the Kingdom of Mercia. In the north, they founded two more kingdoms, Deira and Bernicia, which in time would merge into the Kingdom of Northumbria. And then the last Anglo-Saxon kingdom was East Anglia. These people spoke different dialects of Western Germanic, and their intermingling gave rise to ancient English. For a perfect example, we need look no further than words like English and England, which evidently come from the term used to refer to the Angles.
I never thought of that.
During these troubled times, a large number of formerly Roman cities were abandoned, but one of the few that preserved part of its urban life was Londinium, which then became known as London and would later be called London. In any case, over time new cities were gradually built on top of the old Roman ruins, as in the case of Iorwerwic, the capital of Northumbria, previously known as Eboracum and later as York, and also Wintoncestra, capital of Wessex, which we nowadays know as Winchester. In terms of their social organisation, the Anglo-Saxons didn't complicate themselves too much. At the cusp of their social hierarchy there was a king, or kinning. Next was a prince-heir known as the etheling, and then there were earls or dukes, known as ealdormen. Last of all there were the barons or knights, known as thanes, and these were the ones who fought for the king. There was also the wittenagemot, or witan, a kind of general assembly or council, which periodically gathered all the wise men of the kingdom.
Spare us the theatrics! Behave yourself! Be a good boy, young man! Be a good boy!
The Age of Postroman Britannia is a total frickin' mess, with precious few primary sources, so we are only going to review a simplified version of the most important points.
Let's just keep it simple.
After the year 560, Wessex was ruled by King Ceawlin, who is famous because he managed to expand his kingdom quite a bit following the Battle of Diorham in 577. He captured Glevum, Gloucester, Corinium, Cirencester and Aquae Sulis, Bath, and even reached the Bristol Channel. Around the year 600, the Iclingas founded the Kingdom of Mercia. The exact date is not clear, and neither is the exact identity of the founder. Creoda, Piber, Searle, nobody really knows. But regardless, 601 was an important year for Christianity in the island, since that was when King Ethelbert of Kent was baptised, making him the first pagan Anglo-Saxon ruler to convert. Moreover, he gave permission to the missionary Augustine, sent by Pope Gregory I, to build a monastery of Canterbury, in the capital city of the kingdom, which back then was called Canterbury. From that moment onwards, the Anglo-Saxons gradually began to worship Christ, although for a long time their early Christianity mixed in some Germanic and Celtic pagan elements. For example, the festival period of Easter was thus named for the goddess of spring, Eostra, or Istra, or Ostara, and the days of the week also made reference to Germanic deities. Monday came from Mani, personification of the moon. Tuesday came from Tyr or Tyr, god of single combat. Wednesday came from Woden or Huodin, their version of Odin, god of war and wisdom. Thursday came from Thor, god of thunder. Friday came from Frigg or Freya, goddess of marriage and motherhood. Saturday came from Sieta, god of harvests. And Sunday came from Suna or Sol, personification of the sun.
Wow, a whole week!
Lastly, King Ethelbert was responsible for creating the Law of Ethelbert, the oldest set of laws written in a Germanic language. Soon afterwards, the King of Wessex, Cynegils, jumped on the new trend and also converted to Christianity. London became the episcopal seat and the first church dedicated to St. Paul was built in the city. In the year 604, King Aethelfrith unified Bernicia and Deira and established his capital at Bamborough. Some refer to this union as Northumbria, but that name wouldn't be commonly used until quite a bit later.
But where is this place?
Aethelfrith was surrounded by enemies, namely the Britons of Gododin to the north, the Kingdom of Strathclyde to the west, and the Gallic Kingdom of Dalriata to the northwest. But Aethelfrith was a very brave, or very reckless man, so he fought against every single one of them, and between the years 613 and 616 he won a massive victory over the Welsh kingdoms of Powys and Ross at the Battle of Chester. With this, he managed to cut the land connection between Wales and Cumbria. However, soon afterwards he died fighting against Raedwald, King of East Anglia. Under his protection was Edwin, the exiled son of King Aela, founder of Deira, who, after the deaths of Ethelbert and Aethelfrith, found it relatively simple to lay a claim over Bernicia and Deira. He just needed to marry Aethelberh, the Princess of Kent, and in order to do that he had to convert to Christianity, which he had no trouble doing in 627.
Amen.
This unification and conversion did not go down very well at all with Edwin's neighbour, King Penda of Mercia, since he was extremely pagan and hated all this new Christianity business. So, Penda allied with the Welsh king of Gwenod, Cadwallon ap Cadfan, and together they defeated and killed both Edwin and his son at the Battle of Hatfield Chase in 633. Then, seeing as he was on a roll, the Welsh king decided to carry on fighting and take over the whole region. But a year later, in 634, Oswald, the exiled son of Aethelfrith, defeated him at Heavenfield and became the king of Bernicia. The main thing to point out from his reign is the work of another man, the Irish monk Aidan, who built lots of monasteries, churches and schools, like the one at Lindisfarne, which became one of the main centres for the dissemination of Christianity throughout England.
I would advise every single one of them to convert to Christianity immediately.
In the year 642, King Penda of Mercia counterattacked and killed Oswald at the Battle of Mayserfield, chopping his body into pieces and displaying them on poles. Lovely. Oswald's brother Oswy did not appreciate this and set out to get revenge. He eventually achieved it in 655 with a great victory over the Mercians at the Battle of the River Wynwad. Despite commanding a superior force, King Penda was killed at that battle, and this allowed Oswy to unify the kingdom under the name of Northumbria. After defeating Mercia, Oswy placed on the throne Peda, the son of Penda, because he was Christian, thus marking the conversion of the last pagan kingdom.
Better the devil you know than the pagans you don't.
Everything seemed to be going hunky-dory for the old Jesus religion, but unfortunately the different English Christian churches did not manage to agree on certain issues, like the date or whether to celebrate Easter, for example. For this reason, in the year 664, King Oswy held the Synod of Whitby, where many Christian religious figures gathered at Whitby Abbey to decide whether to adopt the Roman or Irish rites. Eventually the Roman option was chosen, and this unification of the church was very important because it was the seed from which to create a common language and culture, which in turn contributed to the future unification of all England. By the year 660, all the kingdoms of the so-called Anglo-Saxon Heptarchy were already well consolidated. These were Northumbria, Mercia, East Anglia, Essex, Kent, Sussex and Wessex.
England!
In this regard, we must mention Sutton Hoo, a site in East Anglia where an ancient ship burial was discovered, which contained a wealth of historical artefacts in the tomb of an unknown figure, probably King Radwald of the East Angles. This finding is very important because, up until then, historians had believed that the Anglo-Saxons were rather rudimentary and even decadent, but it turned out that their society was far more sophisticated than previously thought. Or at least their nobility was, since they had rich weapons, high-quality ornaments, and an extensive commercial network, as evidenced by the goods found in that grave, which included Franc coins, Byzantine trinkets, and even silk from Syria.
Well, I must say that Prince John has spared no expense for tonight's party.
At that time, Northumbria was the most successful kingdom, and its ruler, Ecgfrith, son of Oswy, got cocky and decided to invade Scotland. Naturally, this met with the objections of the local tribe of Picts, led by their king, Bridie MacBill. Their disagreement came to a head in 685 at the Battle of Dunnectan, where the Picts drew the Northumbrian invaders to a swamp, where they massacred almost all of them, including King Ecgfrith. This defeat severely weakened the Kingdom of Northumbria, and this was taken advantage of by their neighbours in Mercia, who began a period of great expansion to the point that the Mercian king, Athelred I, managed to take over the south of Northumbria in 679, after the Battle of the River Trent. Over the following century, Northumbria would be distracted by constant squabbling between its kings and nobles. Meanwhile, further south, King In of Wessex defeated the Britons of the Kingdom of Dumnonia around 710, and thus vanquished it forever. He then built several monasteries and churches, and also created a legal code, the Law of In. However, after he abdicated in 726 to go on a pilgrimage to Rome, what a nerd,
Being king is exhausting.
Leaving no obvious heir, Wessex was left at the mercy of their powerful neighbours of Mercia. In fact, around 730, under King Ethelbald, Mercia dominated all the other kingdoms in southern England, or at least most of them, including Wessex over intermittent periods. One of his successors was King Offa, and with him Mercia reached its maximum splendour. During his reign he maintained control over southern England, while Sussex, Kent and East Anglia ended up without a king. Well, it's more that those kings ended up without a head.
What's in the box?
It appears that even the Kingdom of Wessex was subject to Mercia, following the death of King Cinewulf. Offa also got into plenty of scuffles with the Welsh Kingdom of Powys, and is famous for building a very long canal and embankments that would serve as a border between England and Wales, which came to be known as Offa's Dyke. Because of this separation, the Anglo-Saxon and Welsh cultures gradually became more distanced and different with the passage of time.
Same genus, different species.
Offa also reformed the economy and introduced pennies, a new currency that persists to this day. Under his leadership, the capital of Mercia was established at the town of Tamworth, located very near modern-day Birmingham. Another city controlled by Mercia was Lincoln, which back then was known as Lincyline, and had evolved from the Roman settlement of Lindum Colonia. But then, as if these 7 Anglo-Saxon kingdoms didn't have enough chaos raging all by themselves, some new enemies appeared: the Vikings. The 8th of June 793 marked the start of the Viking Age with their attack on the Monastery of Lindisfarne in Northumbria.
It's the Viking Age.
This would be the first in a series of raids that would completely redraw the island's political landscape, and which we will see in the next episode of this series.
And the rest is history. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave us a big like. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.